Hey guys, welcome back to the Ghost and Friends YouTube channel. It is Ghost Gambles and Brandie Bets night, and we have more celebrating to do, Brandie. 4-1 for you, 4-1 for myself, and our guest picker also went in. So, yeah, how's that mood over there?
I would say it's great. 2 4-1 weeks in a row for me, 2 winning weeks in a row for us together. Things are going good over here. Just gonna, feed my ego myself a little bit too. I'm still sitting in first in our pick'em league as well. So
Comfortably.
first week not getting 15 picks right, just 14 this week. But yeah, things are great over here.
The first comment of the day is going to be the comment of the program. Thank you, Matt, for tuning in with this gold. Just a friendly neighborhood reminder that the Texas Rangers have won a playoff game at Minute Maid Park more recently than the Houston Astros, who call that venue home. So some spicy stuff on the timeline today. Let me just say this, as a man that was on the Tigers money line, it was always the Tigers money line today. Bullpen game, didn't matter. Astros under Brown, hot, didn't matter. One team was on the way up, and the Astros kind of I'm not going to be more mean than I've been. But thank you, Matt, for that comment. Yes, it is better than my. Yeah, she literally just said she's in first, John, or Josh. Sorry. I've legit thought that dog stats. There's a couple. If John tweets sports or whatever it is,
they're besties. John tweets sports and dog stats.
I didn't even know that, and so yeah, thanks for the confusement, dog stats. But yeah, I am not in first place in the pick'em. I agree with you, Josh. I am in 23rd. I had a 12, 11, and 2 week. We had 2 pushes on the card, right?
Yes, we did have 2 pushes, but I do think it's time to admit the reason why you're so low is because week 1 or week 0. Yeah, you kind of got your pick. He had to scramble to get his picks in, so.
Yeah, that's an embarrassing story. I don't care to admit it, but yeah, I definitely didn't pick anything until like 7 minutes before the 11 a.m. games. I had 2 minutes for a lot of the games for the pick. Yeah, it was a mess. Week 1, I was tailgating, having a good time, and I went 7-18 because I cared more about some drinks and food than I did getting picks in and an appropriate time. So live and learn. I went 7-18 in week 1, and so I think if my math is right, I think I'm 6 or 7 games out of second place. I am not making first place a goal anymore. I do not think I have what it takes.
It's a long ways to go.
I would need you to fall flat on your face, and I don't want that to happen. So I'm rooting for second place, and I will take that. But so overall, I think I'm right around the 500 in the Pick'em group. But here, after a 1-4 start, we turned around. I'm 12-8 on this channel. Brandie is 12-7. So yeah, 24-15 is pretty dang strong, especially when you talk about 8-2 over the last week. 7-3 the week before. So, I mean, it starts to get fun when you talk about 15-5 and just kind of cooking in there, that's just what it is. And so, also, we'll let our guest picker from last week, Parker, come back on here in a little bit when he's ready. Big week there, 4-0. So you're talking about 12-2 on this channel last week. Pretty impressive stuff. I mean, like I told Brandie before we went live, going to be hard to repeat that. Like, variance is a real thing. But we're damn sure going to give you our best shot to have another big week. Shout out to whoever it was in the comments that called our 8-2 week. He spoke it into existence. He said 9-1 this week between the two of us. So, yeah, let's recap last week real quick, Brandie. I'll let you go through. If you want to do all 5 real quick, go ahead. So it was fun to talk about.
Yeah, quite a fun week because I started off the day or the weekend with Kentucky first half plus 10.5 and beating myself up for not giving out Kentucky first or Kentucky money line in general. So that one was really fun. I will be honest, I picked Kentucky first half because of their defense, which I called out on the show last week. And I actually thought Ole Miss was going to have a really good second half, really air it out and have those explosive plays that we're used to. And that just didn't happen. This Kentucky defense is legit.
Yep.
And so what we saw in that Georgia game against Kentucky, I think that was a real statement to who that Kentucky team is. But also the week before that, when South Carolina blew out Kentucky, I think that's a statement of just how good South Carolina's defense is too. So
another really good bunch.
Yeah, so that was really fun. That was a great way to start the morning. Love seeing upsets like that happen, especially in the SEC. And then after that is when things kind of got crazy. So I had USC minus 15 and a half, and the first quarter ended, and I was like, well, I'm just going to chalk that one up to a loss, like, or really the first half, because Washington or Wisconsin was up like 21-16 or something like that at halftime. And I was like, well, there's no way USC is going to cover 15 and a half at this rate. I was like, I'm not even going to worry about keeping up with that game. And so I turned the game back on, and I'm like, holy shit, USC is about to cover this game. And Miller Mosh just goes off in the second half. So that was really exciting. I think USC just got off to a slow start for whatever reason on defense, really locked in there, and just tightened up on offense too, and got the job done somehow, some way. I don't know how that game covered. Still don't. And then Notre Dame minus 6.5, another game that I was like really sweating that one out because that one was really close, kind of the whole time, like back and forth. And it really shouldn't have been as sweaty as it was. But I actually was kind of impressed with Louisville's defense. And the reason why I bet Notre Dame minus 6.5 is because I felt like Louisville's defense against Georgia Tech just showed like no effort. And so I actually was really, really impressed with Louisville's defensive line in that game. Obviously, Notre Dame covered, which awesome for me, but we'll talk about that later when we get to my picks for this week. But I was actually really impressed with Louisville after that game. I think that they actually lost that game because of just like silly little mistakes. And so I was thankful that they made them for this week's purposes or this past week's purposes. And then Illinois plus 17.5. I was sweating this one out with Ghost, and we were texting each other and we're like, oh gosh, like, because I really was not sweating this one until like the last like minute and a half, 2 minutes of the game, because truly like Illinois was driving and could have won that game, like, or could have tied that game up. Like, it was kind of crazy. And I actually think that Illinois team is pretty decent. They showed a lot of heart, but at the end of the day, like Penn State just had their defense really showed up. And when they got the ball back, I don't know. The end of that game was crazy. I don't know if everybody watched the end of that game, but there was a point there where I was like, if Penn State gets the ball back and they don't kneel it out, I'm going to be really upset, because I was a little worried that plus 17.5 was in danger, but it somehow wasn't. So yeah, I think that was all of my winners, right?
Kentucky, USC, Illinois, Notre Dame. Yes.
Yeah. And then my one loser, was just totally off the mark. I'm not betting on them the rest of the season because I think I have just tied myself to a team that we saw last year with this team, and that was Kansas minus 1.5. They actually came out of the gun super high and just like totally deflated the rest of the game. They weren't able to capitalize on turnovers because they actually played pretty decent on defense. I'm disappointed in Kansas, and I will not be betting them the rest of the season because of this. Jalen Daniels, we've said it on here before. He's just not the same. Devin Neal had a great game, I thought, and that's kind of why I bet on that game, because I figured he would tear it up against that TCU run D, and he kind of did, but it still just wasn't enough, and they just still made like sloppy mistakes. So couldn't get that one there for a 5-0 week, but I'm not betting on Kansas anymore either. So
well, we left ourselves some room, you know. We haven't had the sweep yet over the 5-pick sweep. I guess Parker just had a 4-pick sweep, but so yeah, I mean, you know, something to aspire and dream towards. It's fine. Kansas let you down. It's okay. At least you didn't have a very bonehead play like Ole Miss minus 17.5 on your card, because as you just said, Kentucky controlled that game on the. I was sad, to be honest. I love seeing upsets, and so I was like, I can't even root for the upset because it's an 11 a.m. game. I'm starting my card off terribly. But, yeah, so Kansas let you down there. It's okay. Ole Miss let me down early Saturday. I guess I'm skipping Virginia Tech. Friday night, Virginia Tech, shout out to the Hokies. Ooh. Nobody believed in that pick. I felt dirty.
I didn't either. I picked Miami in the Pick'em League.
Every single person I talked to said no, which was only about a handful of people, but they were like, no, you're silly. And they shouldn't have won the game should not have won the game outright. And I don't think that was a catch, to be honest. I know there's a lot of controversy there, but regardless, they got inside the 19.5 very, very easily. And that one was sweat free, which we love. So then Virginia Tech Friday night, turn around Ole Miss Saturday morning, get drugged there. That hurt a little bit. Shout out to the Gophers of Minnesota, who had a furious second half, getting inside the number of 9.5. I got it early in the week. We do the show on Wednesdays. It got all the way up to 11.5, I think. And I was texting Brandie saying how annoyed I was that I got it early. And lucky for me, Minnesota gets in the end zone there anyways. Shout out Brosmer, had a big second half. Definitely felt lucky to get there. I'll say that. You got to call it how it is. Felt lucky got there. Maryland, Indiana, over 53. That game had 0 points in the first quarter, and it ended up with 70. 21 second quarter points. Kind of, I felt good about the way the game was trending, but you're still talking about a pretty big second half points wise, and we're talking about doing so in the Big Ten. So I was still doubtful that it got there, but yeah, there was they blew up in that second half. 28 points in the third quarter, 21 more in the fourth. An easy cover for Maryland and Indiana. And then kind of flip-flop that with A&M and Arkansas. Had the under 52 there. We have 21 points in the first 10 minutes. I was like, okay, it's going to be one of those A&M and Arkansas games, but then a very good A&M defense prevailed. And luckily, A&M still struggling pretty badly on offense to the point where they really couldn't even do much with Arkansas. And so 21-17 final there after having 21 points in the first 10 minutes. Under 52 gets there very, very easily. So 4-1 for myself, 4-1 for Brandie. Hey, I think it's okay to pat ourselves on the back. You know, this some of these games, you know, Notre Dame, sweaty. Absolutely. Illinois, not so much, but there was still an avenue where it could have got really sweaty really quickly.
We were both a little worried there in the last minute. We were like, please don't be a pick six. Because
yeah.
They were trying to go for the ends. I was like, please don't be a pick six.
Yeah, we've seen weird things happen in college football. And so, you know, USC, you know, they get there in the end. Illinois was a terrific read. Obviously, Kentucky, your Kentucky read was all right. You know, I guess that was okay.
Ghost, you're going to stop going against me on these plays when I send them. You're like, oh, I hate that you have that because I have the other side. I'm like, no.
The worst part about it is it almost happened again today. Well, we can talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, it almost happened again today when we trade our picks. And I'm just like scratching out one whole section of my nose. And I'm just like, nope, I'm not going back down this. Brandie is 3-0 in games that we both picked. Now, every time we could have both won, we could have middled, or we've had separate halves or full games. It just hasn't happened. But I will tell you this, today we are on the same side of a game, and I'm going to be really sad if Brandie wins and I lose because we do not have the same play. We have a half and we have a full game. So I'm trying to change up the juju a little bit. I cannot keep going against her. She is too good. She has proven that she is too good. So while we wait on Mr. Parker to hop in, Brandie, what's the first play on your card for week 6?
First play on my card is Louisville -6.5. So I just mentioned how I bet against them last week, and I actually bet against them the week before and lost. So I'm like 1-1 in betting games where Louisville's involved this season. But Louisville plays SMU this weekend at home, and I actually really, really love this SMU team. Ghost has had a lot of really good bets on them this year. I used to work under their offense. Oh, you're good. I did it. I'm out there. I am not betting on Auburn football this year at all.
Brandie single-handedly pumped that line down. I like that. That's really good.
But yeah. So I'm gonna pivot here, and I really like Louisville -6.5, and I know Ghost has loved this SMU team. I've loved this SMU team too. So many people thought there would be a quarterback going probably into this game. That's not the person that's starting for SMU, but Jennings has been really good for SMU, and I feel like they have kind of been tested. They haven't had the easiest schedule necessarily leading up to this. But what I really love about Louisville is that defensive line. They're 4th in the country in run defense per PFF, which is pretty insane. They're only allowing 3.6 yards per carry. And I will say, I think this is going to be close at first. Like the first half of this game, I wouldn't be surprised if SMU is leading this game at halftime by any means, because the thing that Kevin Jennings is really good at is basically RPO, play action under pressure. Like he is good at getting the ball out and getting it out fast. And that's going to be good. And that's going to rattle that Louisville defense just a little bit when the game first starts. But I just don't know how SMU is going to be able to put up the amount of points needed to cover plus 6.5, much less like win this game outright. And I think Ja'Cory Brooks is in for a huge game for Louisville's offense. And so I like SMU's offense, but I think that Louisville's defense is a huge mismatch for them in the run game. But also, I think that Louisville's offense in general is just going to feast on that SMU secondary. That SMU secondary is horrible, in my opinion. But their offense makes up for it and has all season. And that's not surprising. Rhett Lashley is an offensive-minded coach. So, but I really like Louisville here. I really like Ja'Cory Brooks to kind of feast on this SMU secondary. So Louisville minus 6.5. Some people may look at that line and think, it's a little off. SMU's played really well lately. But I actually am really impressed with this Louisville defense, especially from the Georgia Tech game to the Notre Dame game. So
Louisville is a little bit different of an animal than the TCU team and Florida State team that SMU just blew out. They're a lot. I think they're coached better. I think they have probably better talent even than Florida State right now. And so I do have a little bit of personal connection to this SMU team. I like them. I like Kevin Jennings. I like that they're very balanced on offense. I like their front seven on defense, but I'm going to ride with you on this one. I'm going to trust you here. Louisville looked good last week. Without that, was a delay game or false start on 4th and 1 in Notre Dame territory. They would have had a shot to tie that up. Thankfully for our guard, it didn't work out. Silly penalty at a silly time. Let's trust Coach Brown to get it right this week. So Brandie's locked in. Louisville minus 6.5 as the SMU Mustangs come up to Louisville. So I like it. I'm with you there. I'm riding it. I've got on my first. All right. So first play I have on my card, we're riding with Diego Pavia, the Vanderbilt Commodores, plus 23. You're like, they're playing Alabama. It's a 23-point spread. There's a lot of reasons here that why Alabama should cover that spread. But hey, Vanderbilt, they're pretty underrated in the trenches so far. I like that the run defense is playing a lot better. They gave Missouri a lot of fits, obviously. But most importantly for me, this is a tough bounce back spot for Alabama after a very hard-fought, emotional win against Georgia. I just think, you put so much into that one. Obviously, there's a strong reaction after you win. And obviously, Coach DeBoer knows his stuff. He knows ball, and he'll have them ready. But I can see a flat start and Vanderbilt with an opportunity to say, hey, we really are changing a little bit as a program. I just think it's so easy to take Vanderbilt in this game, especially just seeing what they did to Georgia and thinking about Jalen Milroe running left and right and all over the Vanderbilt defense. But Alabama doesn't have a bye week coming up for several weeks. They ran the heck out of Milroe last week, and they've got some really tough games coming up. So I think they try to do things in a separate way this week on offense outside of using Jalen's legs and try to find some other ways to do what they do. And he's a really good quarterback. They'll still move the football. But I've got this game shaping up to be something like 34-17. I like Vanderbilt inside the number. Yes, Dog Stats, this would be hilarious. We
would all love to see it.
I mean, please, just please one time. Brandie, thoughts on Vandy plus 23.5?
I like it. That line is just way too long for a Vanderbilt team that I think isn't as bad as what people make them out to be. Both of these defenses are kind of suspect in my opinion. There's still a lot to be had for that Alabama secondary. There's a lot of question marks there still. I think that Alabama is great on offense, but I also think Vanderbilt has a pretty decent offense with Diego kind of leading the helm there. I like it. I could see this actually, you said 34-17. I could see this kind of being like a little bit of a shootout between Alabama and Vanderbilt heading into the fourth quarter.
I'll take it. However we get inside the number, just please. And I'm hoping Diego obviously is going to have to use his legs in this game, but I agree with you. That he will have his opportunities in the passing game because that is a little bit of a weakness for the Crimson Tide as they showed in the second half. Is Dog Stat still in here? I don't love, which I guess wrong dog, but I don't love Carson Beck as a quarterback at the moment. And even he took big time advantage of that Alabama secondary in the second half. So I'm locking it in. I feel really good about it, to be honest, which is scary because last week I kind of was iffy on every play that I came up with, and we rolled with it. But what do you have as your second play, Miss Brandie?
We can go into the game that I think we both have a play on, and that's Iowa first half plus 10.5 for me. So I really like Iowa in this spot. This is going to be Ohio State's toughest opponent that they've played so far this season. They've really kind of had a little bit of a cakewalk leading into this game. The toughest opponent that they played was Michigan State that they blew out last weekend, who's a top 100 team, but Iowa really is a top 30 team in the country. Will Howard's been fine. Nothing crazy from him. But really, I've been impressed with the Iowa offense this year. So they've put up 30 in 3 of their first 4 games this season. They did it once last season. And that's in big part due to Caleb Johnson just tearing it up on the ground for them at the running back position. And so I think this game is going to be kind of slow paced because that's the type of game that Iowa likes to play. They like to slow things down. And yeah, I just think that Iowa's going to be able to slow this down. It's going to be kind of a low scoring game going into halftime. And so I really like the plus 10.5 here in the first half in this Iowa-Ohio State game. So yeah, and also too, I'm really curious to see how Ohio State's wide receivers do against Iowa because Ohio State has had, like, they do have good wide receivers like they usually do. But Jamani Harris is, or am I saying that right? Jamari Harris. He's kind of been he's been really good in Iowa secondary, and so I'm curious to see how they do against him. People don't like to throw, so when he's in the area, so yeah, I like Iowa first half plus 10.5. And Ghost, I know you have a play on this game as well.
And it wasn't just because Brandie did. Okay, I had this written down, and I'm riding the full game with Iowa. I just really think they get them kind of in a mud fest, put them in the blender. I'm not saying they win the game. I just think they mud this game up enough and slow it down. I'm gonna be honest. I'm still not convinced about Will Howard. Like you said, this is going to be the best defense, the best team that Michigan or that Ohio State has seen, and I'm gonna have to see it. And so, for me, I have this one. I have Ohio State winning 24-17. I think it'll be closer than that the big 20 points. I think it could be a one possession game going down to the end. I really do. It's just hard for me. I know we saw Ohio State beat up on a lowly Michigan State last week, back at the shoe. Big home crowd, but Iowa coming off a bye week, they had a massive rally not a massive rally, but whipped Minnesota in the second half of their last game. So I know they're pretty high going into the bye week, and then coming out of it, I expect the game plan for Ferentz and then the new OC. I expect them to really, really work the clock, as Brandie is saying, slow things down, and then really be aggressive, try to take away that Ohio State running game, force Will Howard to beat them. And I'm just not convinced that he can do it handedly. He'll still beat them, in my opinion, but I don't think it'll be handedly. So please, Brandie, if you guys in Iowa and y'all are find a way to be down a touchdown, I need y'all to hold on so badly in that second half. I can't lose another game that we share together. Otherwise, I just can't do this anymore.
We're on the same team. We're on the same team at least this time too. And I don't have any of the lines up because I don't get college player props in Tennessee, but I would have a lean here, and that would be take the rushing yards for both teams because I think this is going to turn into a ground game for both teams because of how elite Iowa's secondary is. And Ohio State also has a pretty decent secondary as well. Iowa doesn't have that big of a passing threat. So I would say a lean here from a player prop perspective. I don't know what the line is, but I think it's going to turn into a massive run game battle between both of these running back rooms.
Well, it's hard, like talk about betting on Iowa. Yeah, it is really hard to do at times, but they're a little bit different this year schematically. They've shown that they'll take a couple shots. Now, can they take and connect on a couple of shots against a really good Ohio State defense and secondary? That remains to be seen. But we're locking it in. We feel good about it. Brandie, what's your third play you have?
My third play, and this line is so ratty and it is so weird, but so were lines last week. And I still feel like I had to take the team that I was more confident in, was the better team, regardless of how ratty that line looked. And I'm taking Michigan plus 2.5 on the road at Washington this week. And people are probably hearing that and being like, how is Michigan the underdog? I don't know. But I truly think that Michigan's defensive line is going to take this game over. Washington has I think it's 4 or 5 new starters in the offensive line this year compared to the team that they had last year. And I like Will Rogers, but I just don't think he has the firepower to get the ball down the field against this Michigan defense. And I get us on the West Coast, but really it's not that far for Michigan to travel to this game. It's kind of like them going all the way up north on the East Coast, just on the West Coast this time. And so I don't know why this line is what it is, but I think this is a huge mismatch from a Michigan defensive line and Washington offensive line perspective, and that's literally the full like analysis behind this bet. Is Michigan's defensive line is going to dominate this game, and I don't know why the line is what it is. So Michigan plus 2.5 is my third bet. I wouldn't be surprised if Michigan wins this game outright. I know Washington has a decent defense as well. So I think if this is going to be like a true low scoring game, not really impressed with Michigan's offense. Washington, nothing to write home about. Hey, I'm not saying all of that, but
I mean, it just doesn't make sense though. Like this line is the goofiest line of the week. It doesn't make sense. It's hard to imagine how Washington, who struggled with Rutgers, is going to slow down probably more physical and powerful rushing attack. That line is crazy. I mean, there's no way you can take Washington in that game. The only thing I could ever see anyone taking is Michigan there, which is scary. But I don't blame you because it just doesn't feel there's a way that Washington can win this game. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I haven't looked at like what the public is on, or I don't think this line has really moved either since it opened.
It hasn't.
So,
no.
Yeah. So it's so strange, but also like similar last week, Baylor and BYU. Baylor has been dog shit all year, and they were favored by 3.5 against an undefeated BYU team. And I was like, well, that's ratty. And I was very close to picking Baylor simply because of the line in our Pick'em League. And I was like, you know what? I just can't in good conscience pick a team that I know sucks against a team that I know doesn't suck. And I've watched both of these teams play, and I was like, I'm not going to let just like a line that's supposed to bait one side or the other get in the way of like what my eyes are showing me. And so that's kind of the same mentality that I'm using here with Michigan plus 2.5.
I mean, I like it. Last week, sharp money was coming in on Baylor early in that game, which was shocking. It was like, how is this played out? I unfortunately did take Baylor in the pick'em, trying to fade that crazy line. Did not work out. They had every opportunity to come back there. With that being said, guys,
I think we talked about that before picks were due. That was a game me and you were like going back and forth on. I was like, I think I got to settle on BYU here. Yeah, I feel like we were like texting wise, we were talking about that game.
Yeah, we definitely talked a little. It made no sense whatsoever. I mean, Baylor's pretty bad. And then obviously BYU was coming off the Liv Moss and blowing out Kansas State. So weird deal there. Obviously worked out for you. Glad it did. Guys, we're going to bring in our guest picker. Parker's in the house. Welcome to Mr. 4-0. Parker, Sweet Dollar Iced Tea. How we doing, brother?
Good, man.
Good. Thanks well, welcome.
Having me on a bit later. I definitely needed some time. It's been a pretty crazy couple days. So.
Oh, no, man. You're good. Take all the time you need. Last time you kind of did it on short notice, and it worked out all right.
Yeah, it did. It sure did. It was a great week. What was it? 14-2 or 12-2?
12-2. Yeah, Parker with the 4-0 sweep. We would talk to you real quick. We had Duke money line in there, which was obviously a fun one. My favorite part of the weekend might have been texting you Duke money line from the grave with a couple of other words in there because we're both at DKR, and you were like, no way. And obviously they got down 3 scores in that one.
Yeah, so you texted me that, and I couldn't update my scores, but I could text you for some reason. So that was wild. That was so wild.
That Duke comeback was crazy. You guys probably weren't able to watch since you weren't at the game. That was wild.
Yeah. No, it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. UNC's defense has been so bad.
Pitching their first half shutout, it looked like it was all over. And then as soon as Duke scored early in the third, I was like, okay, you can see an avenue here where they easily get back into this game. 2-score game. Of course, there's still time. But so after Duke, you also were on Notre Dame minus 6.5, correct?
No, was on Illinois plus 18 with Brandie.
Okay. I knew y'all had one together.
See, we were also on. See, I texted you earlier. It was Kansas State minus 4.5. That which covered easily.
Easy good looks there. Yeah. That game was fun.
It was. And then Texas Tech minus 2.5. So phenomenal. And then at the end of the show, we briefly talked about Alabama, which I had taken on Wednesday earlier that week. So I just gave that as a lean on this show, but had put it on my Twitter and forgot I did. So
5 sounds good.
I had Georgia as a lean, but I ended up tailing you guys in the pick'em on Alabama. But at the end of it, I was like, you know what? It was my emotional way of hedging that because I'm an Auburn fan. So,
me and Parker talked the next day, and he was like, "Man, I think I think Brandie, should know that, I think there's a really good chance Auburn beats Oklahoma. Parker, did you think she was an Oklahoma fan for a moment, or?
No, I thought you were an Auburn fan.
Oh, she
right?
is.
I am.
She is. Good. Okay.
Good.
But yeah, I definitely.
An Auburn grad.
This is a good idea. We can do this. I know a guy named Dog Stats will be perfect for this. We can bring him on. And just kidding, buddy. Thank you. It means a lot that you're here and having fun with us, man. Just giving you some heck. But yeah, absolutely a stunning week, guys. I mean, 12-2, great work. Little crazy in there. Tech had to hold on for dear life. I thought I was going to lose a lot of years off my life in that game. And
did you publish your parlay that you hit?
I did not publish the parlay that I hit.
I didn't even.
Awesome hit.
Can we talk about it?
Did go pretty big on a parlay. Had a little free play in the old account. Put a little 6-teamer together, and with Duke money line, Texas Tech money line. What was that?
Yeah, a couple unders, I think.
I had a couple unders. Had the A&M under in there. I had another under. I had Cowboys -3 for the first half on Thursday night. So I schemed it up like Wednesday after our show, like immediately after. Yeah, 150 to win almost 2K. Definitely a lot of fun to see that cash. As soon as the Cincinnati kicker lined up to try to tie the game there, I was like, this kid is cooked. He doesn't have a chance in hell. And I even started typing out basically a celebration message to one of my other buddies that was sweating it pretty hard with me. I was like, this guy, he doesn't have a chance. And, awesome. He really did. So normally when I feel like that, he buries it down the middle, and then Tech fumbles in overtime, and Cincinnati ends it really quickly. But definitely a fun sweat. Thank you guys for helping and being a part of that.
Man, that was awesome, man.
We're right in the yeah. Thank you, brother. Right in the middle of giving out some picks, Mr. Parker. So far, Miss Brandie has Louisville -6.5 at home against SMU. She's got the first half +10.5. Iowa at Ohio State, and then Michigan full game +2.5 as they travel to the West Coast and Husky Stadium. Go ahead and give us your first couple, my man, if you have time for that.
I actually really like all of those. I'm not going to lie. And my first pick was also Michigan. So
this is 2 weeks in a row.
We don't know why the line is like that. Like,
it doesn't make any sense.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and I anticipate that being Vegas thinking that Washington is going to have a really good home advantage. They typically do for big games like this. I think back to Washington versus Oregon last year. That was probably one of the most electric atmospheres of the entire year in all of college football.
Yeah,
I imagine it's going to be a great crowd. When I look at this game, the model and again, we kind of talked last week. There were a couple different games where I broke it down. I said, I don't really understand why a certain team is favored, but I'm going to stop, saying that the public is on this. The line doesn't make sense. I'm not going to avoid it just because of those things. And it turned out really well for us. So my model has them as a pick 'em. I think Michigan wins the game outright.
Yep.
I'm fading my own model here. Because that's on a neutral site, which would favor Washington if they were to pick them. So adjusted for opponents, Michigan has the 10th ranked rush defense and the 24th ranked pass defense. Washington has the 58th ranked rush offense and 19th ranked rush pass offense and 19th ranked rush offense. And then also Michigan has the 10th ranked rushing attack against the 39th ranked rush defense. We know that Michigan's not going to be passing the ball in this game. They're going to be running the ball, and they'll be effective doing it. I think the game will be fairly low scoring. It's going to be one of your typical Big Ten scores, I believe. This is going to be something like 24-15 or 24-17 or something like that. But I just think Michigan's the better team. She already talked about the defensive line. Their secondary is really, really, really good. For all of the credit that we give their rush defense, their pass off defense is amazing too. So I think for Washington, they're going to have a really hard time scoring against this team, and that's where I think Michigan's going to pull ahead. Michigan surprised us all, I think, with that USC game. I'd already kind of leaned on Michigan to win that game, but they did it in a great fashion. USC came back at the end of that game. And I look at that game as I think that game really serves as a indicator for where Michigan is as a team. I can't see Washington pulling ahead of Michigan offensively unless Michigan totally fails to run the ball, which I just don't think is going to happen. So Michigan, I'd even be willing to take the 2.5. 3 is a key number, but I'm definitely tailing a 2.5 for sure.
I like it, man. I really do. Long trip last weekend, obviously, for Washington, going all the way to Piscataway, coming back. It just that line makes no sense for exactly what you talked about. The way that run game looked against USC, the way that they defended that USC offense in the first half, like this Washington team is like I'm trying to be respectful here, but it's like the JV version of USC. They got Will Rogers, who's going to throw it. Will Rogers has done good things in college football. Okay, I still think Miller Moss is going to be the better quarterback eventually. He's looked really good. Don't have the same type of receiving talent that USC does. Nowhere close to it. So I just don't see a way that Washington manufactures enough points to. I mean, it just seems crazy to me. Almost too easy, but I'm going to ride it with you guys. I'm there on it. Michigan plus 2.5. I love that you're both, like-minded on that one. What do you have as your next play, brother?
Yeah. Next one's a little gross. Trusting my guns here. I typically like taking the underdog when I think that they have a chance of winning the game. I don't think that's going to be the case here, but I think the spread is too large. So Duke is currently a 9.5-point underdog against Georgia Tech. So Georgia Tech has been terrible against the pass this year. I think they're 114th nationally, adjusted for opponents is like 122nd. Duke is 50th in passing the ball. That's a massive, massive, massive discrepancy. Georgia Tech is 114th nationally in sacks, and I think there's something in like 120-something in producing turnovers. So Georgia Tech is going to run the ball on Duke. Duke's been phenomenal against the run and against the pass. Georgia Tech's going to have their work cut out for them. I do think they can score points on Georgia Tech. Duke hasn't faced an offense that is as high tempo as Georgia Tech. I don't think it's going to matter. I think that Georgia Tech is going to struggle to reach 28, and I think that realistically they hit something like 24 points. Duke's definitely good for 14. They're good enough to keep this game close, and plus 9.5 is too many points. So I'm going to go ahead and take that.
Riding back with Duke, I love it, man. They did us. We got there last week, a little sweaty, but they didn't do us wrong. I looked at that game as well and kind of wondered. I didn't know what my initial thoughts were. I didn't look into it as much as I wanted to. Brandie, what are your thoughts on Duke plus 9 there? I know we both like Coach Key.
I was gonna say I like him, but I like him in the underdog spot more than I do in the favorite spot. So I can get behind this. Georgia Tech, like they have a knack of like outgaining opponents and not being able to win the game, and so I like it. I can get behind that for sure.
Absolutely, go Duke. It's easy to love Malik and root for that guy. So I hope he rips up the Yellow Jacket defense a little bit. So Brandie, you've given out 3, correct?
Yes.
You got Louisville, Iowa, Michigan. I'm tough. So I wrote down six plays, wanting to get out only 5 and then making one a lean. My next play is going to be the fade of Kansas. We're going to go Arizona State at home -3 against Kansas. I never thought I would before the season. If you told me I ever bet Arizona State over Kansas, I would have called you absolutely crazy. I love Jalen Daniels. I love the head ball coach. I like Devin Neal. Think you have some good pieces on defense there in Kansas, but they look awful. Jalen Daniels is so much of a shell of what he was over the last couple of seasons. I don't know if he's injured. I don't know if it's confidence. I don't know if it's just lack of connection with wide receivers, but nothing looks the same. Not the way he runs the ball, not the way he throws the ball. Then you have Arizona State, who lost that game in Lubbock, got to sit there for a bye week, and then they have their first home Big 12 game. They're going to be very physical with the running game, control the ball. They're not going to turn the football over. I have Arizona State covering the 3 points. Jalen Daniels has 800 yards on the year, 5 TDs, 8 picks. It's not cutting it. It's not cutting it. Not at all. How do y'all feel about it? It's mostly just a fate of Kansas, guys, playing some bad football, losing to some pretty mediocre teams. Arizona State kind of fits that mediocre mold. I mean, not to hate on the Sun Devils, but I still see them getting by Kansas by a touchdown to 10 points here.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I said at the very beginning of the show, because my one loss last week was Kansas -1.5, and I think I gave out them as a lean the week before against West Virginia, which looked like it was going to hit before that rain delay. And I'm over betting Kansas, over believing in a team that was who they were last year and are the exact opposite of that, it feels like, this year. So I can definitely get behind it too. And I think Kenny Dillingham has something special kind of going on with the Sun Devils too. So I like it. He can move the ball. knows how to make his team move the ball very well on offense. And so I would expect Arizona State to kind of run it up on Kansas this weekend. I like it.
Smelling blood in the water for Coach Dillingham. Parker, any thoughts, man? Am I crazy?
No, you're not crazy. This is a game that scares me to death. I think that Arizona State is a good look for sure. I think Kansas has been really bad. It's so hard to bet against a team that's made me so much money in the last 2 years. I mean, like so much money, but they've been so bad, and I'm thankful I haven't put my money on them yet. It's really hard to watch the fall of Daniels, but I feel like it's happening right before our eyes. He's turned the ball over so many times. He's on the road for this game, if I'm correct about that.
It is.
Yeah.
In the desert.
Arizona State's conference debut at home. It's definitely the look. It's definitely the look. I have some advanced stats that are a little concerning.
That's good stuff, man.
But anyways, I'm personally staying off that one. It'll be really interesting to watch. But I don't know.
I get it, man. I love Kansas football. You know, a lot of people are like, you lost to Kansas. I'm like, yeah, we lost to Jalen Daniels. Okay. He's fun to watch and he only got better. And I'm sorry that you don't know ball. But no, it's just weird to see, man. It really is. Brandie and I faded Kansas against UNLV, faded Kansas against Illinois. I really was shocked to hear her say that, you know, she had Kansas on the card last week. I understood why. It's not like West Virginia's world beaters either way, but it doesn't make any sense.
TCU was bad. TCU was really bad. I don't know. Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry. West Virginia was the week before. Yeah, wow.
Oh yeah. Both of those teams. West Virginia actually is a little bit better than what I initially thought. But yes, Kansas is in a rough spot right now, and I don't think a lot of people across the country thought they would be saying that at this point in the season on week 6.
We were all really excited to see Leipold do well there.
Yeah,
he had some pretty good offers in the offseason, and kind of wonder if he maybe should have taken some of those, but.
I wanted the Kansas K-State game to like be a huge game this year between two top 20 teams. And like, I like the Kansas schools for whatever reason. Parker, third pick, brother. What you got on the card?
All right. So, this is gross. And I have an advanced stat to maybe entice you guys a little bit more. I like the full game spread, but it's an SEC team on the road. I'm going to go with a first half spread here. Ole Miss -6.5 first half. So there's this crazy stat. SEC teams that lost as a 7+ point favorite the week before have gone 34-15 against the spread since 2016. So that's 69.4%. Now, if they are favored by at least 7 points in that second game, so Ole Miss again, they were whatever it was against Kentucky, like a 13.5 point favorite last week.
17.5
point favorite, and are now currently again a 7 point favorite. That has gone 23-5 against the spread since 2016. That is an 82.1% hit rate. I like them to cover the full game spread, which is 9.5, but for me, I'm going to take the first half 6.5. Don't want any last minute, trash points being scored and crushing the spread here. So,
no, I like that. I mean, Ole Miss got punched in the mouth last week, and it's like now or never. You don't have any other mulligans. Ole Miss probably has to go undefeated the rest of the way to for sure a playoff spot. But yeah, I expect the Rebs. I need to see Dart throw at anybody other than Trey Harris. Like they're gonna have to find some other wide receiver to step up against some of these better SEC defenses. But you're not worried about the South Carolina defense at all, Parker?
So that's another thing I was going to look at really quick. When adjusted for opponents, I remember reading that they are – this was a favorable matchup, and I'm having a hard time pulling it up for some reason. Not sure why.
Take your time, man.
I think the game is going to be close in the first quarter. And in the second quarter and rest of the game, I wouldn't be surprised if Ole Miss kind of runs away with the game. They're probably pissed off from last week. They still have Georgia on the schedule, I believe, too. So they have to win out besides that game, I think, to make the playoffs. And, like, this is the best team that really they're saying they've had in the history of their school. So I know that there's a lot of pressure on the team and on the head coach right now to go out there and, like, basically be perfect besides when they play Georgia. I would be curious to see what South Carolina's defense looks like against explosive plays because that's the type of offense that Ole Miss runs is essentially a ton of deep balls that Jackson Dart throws. But I am a little worried for the pressure that Dart might see from the South Carolina defense because I think it's better than the pressure that he saw from Kentucky's defense. So I don't actually really don't hate the play because I think that Ole Miss like the pressure part of it, and they do still have a good team and still have a good offense. And going into last week, I'm pretty sure Lane Kiffin is like not good against the spread in 11 a.m. games, and Mark Stoops has always had his number, whether that's just like in covering or winning outright. And so that's another reason kind of why I was on Kentucky last week, but I don't hate that Ole Miss minus 6.5 first half pick.
Those numbers are strong. I mean, you talk about all the numbers, like they're really strong numbers. Definitely the Rebs got to show out. I mean, show early. I mean, they don't mess around. They'll find themselves in a dogfight in Columbia, and it'll be war for 4 quarters, and they definitely can't afford to lose that game. So a solid start, Parker, is what they need, and obviously hopefully Lane Kiffin has the Rebs up to on Saturday. Brandie, your 4th pick. Sorry, now I think we're all caught back up with 3 each. My bad.
Yes, my 4th pick is Clemson minus 13.5. I bet this immediately when the line came out and knew that I was going to have this on my card. I think I might have sent this to us earlier in the week too, but Clemson has been a wagon since their game against Georgia. Their defensive line, I think, is the best defensive line in the country, or at least top 2. And Cade has not made very many mistakes on offense. He had an interception against Georgia, and he did have an interception this past weekend against Stanford, but it didn't matter because they won 40-17. So they have just kind of been lighting it up ever since that Georgia game. And I think starting out with an opponent like Georgia is really what set them up for this. So they're going on the road at FSU this weekend. Who knows who FSU is going to start at quarterback, but this is like an abysmal season for FSU. Like, I don't think I've seen this happen to a team since the year after Auburn won the national championship in 2010 and we fired Gene Chizik a year after he was fresh off of a national championship. And I don't know if that is just misses on the transfer portal or what it was, but this is a really bad Florida State team. And part of it does have to do with DJ, but also like his offensive line just isn't really good. So that's a huge mismatch, I think. I don't think it matters who starts at quarterback. So I think Clemson is going to continue rolling this Saturday. So I like Clemson minus 13.5. And if you can't get it at 13.5, I like it all the way up to 16.5.
It's hard to think Florida State hangs around. I mean, they just got raced by SMU. Just dusted up there. And so it's hard to see a world where they have a lot of fight left in them. And then Clemson on the other side, obviously they're ascending a little bit, still trying to, not that style points are like necessary because they still can go 11-1, but the way that they're playing right now, offense, they're taking shots down the field again. It's crazy to watch them in week 1 and then later in the season and just see the way that they're trying to do things offensively. A lot more trust in Cade Klubnik. Parker, any thoughts on Clemson and the big spread versus the Noles?
Yeah, I definitely thought about it myself. It's a little too many points for me with Clemson on the road. They're so much better at home every year. They've had a pretty insane home field advantage for some time. That's not just in terms of winning the game. That's also in terms of against the spread. I think that they probably cover the spread. It's like Cade Klubnik in week 1 it's like he heard that people thought he was bad at being a quarterback and all of a sudden just completely went out to show everyone that they were completely wrong about that. But he's been pretty phenomenal. That offense has just been on a roll. So I can definitely see it happening. Florida State, of course, had a horrible game last week against SMU. I try not to let like a one-off judge my opinion. That could have been a game that they thought or alter my opinion. They were giving up like less than 20 points per game. I think before that, I think the most they had given up was to Memphis, who has a fantastic offense. I think they gave up like 20 in that game. Is it possible that Florida State's defense is good enough to keep them in the game? It is possible. I agree, though. I think that it's highly likely that Clemson just rolls. So I like it.
I think Dabo has a point to make too this season. He's gotten a lot of shit lately for not utilizing the transfer portal, and what better team to show that he doesn't need the portal to, make a statement than the team that is basically built directly from and all completely from the portal. So
that's a good point, and obviously with a little bit of a rivalry there, can't wait to see it play out. It's going to be a fun one. Definitely more interested in Clemson football than I was, a month ago. It's a little different brand, brand of offense that they're playing out there. My fourth pick, and I've struggled deciding on who I thought would win this game all week. And then today it's like I kind of saw the light. I have not one time picked against a rival on this channel. So for anyone watching that thinks like, hey, this guy's just fading rivals all the time. No, it's not the case. I'm going Missouri money line. For a lot of reasons, until A&M can show me that they can beat anyone at Kyle Field with a pulse, which they will do under Mike Elko. I know we go there later, so I'm setting myself up for a lot of pain and disaster with that comment. But it's tough for me to see them getting it done against Missouri this week. I think it'll be a good ball game, but I think Missouri gets out of there with a touchdown win, to be honest. Nate Noel's been fantastic. Wow, this guy can't talk. But then when you look at the wide receiver core, you're talking about Luther Burden, obviously Theo Weiss, Mookie Cooper. The running back Carroll's have been really good for them. They love to run 10 personnel. I think they try to spread out a really good Aggie defensive line, maybe make them run sideline to sideline. A&M's defense is good. They're not super, super deep. I'm curious to see if they can chase around Missouri. I think they'll do a lot better job of getting the ball in Luther Burden's hands. Last week, A&M won the turnover battle with Arkansas 3-0. Still only walked out of there with a 4-point win. One of those touchdowns that they scored there to tie the game up was gift wrapped by an incredible defensive play by Nick Scorton as he created a fumble on a little mesh blow up deep inside Arkansas territory, like the 10-yard line. And so, looking at it, it's just really hard to have a lot of faith in the Aggie offensive line. But there's been issues. We don't know if their starting center is coming back this week or not. Missouri with the bye week. It's a chance for that team to kind of look in the mirror like, hey, we've had a lot of issues, but it's time now to kind of step it up and reach that potential that a lot of people thought we had coming into the season. So looking down the line for Missouri, if they get by this game, it is a very, very, very favorable schedule. It gives them a bit of a mulligan with Alabama. I think there's going to be a lot of emphasis. Obviously, you want to win the game. Missouri's going to treat this game as a big win. They'll find a way to go into Kyle Field, get a W. Because I don't think there's enough out of that Aggie offense. Not yet. Any thoughts, Missouri versus the Aggies?
We were talking about this game earlier in the week. Is the Texas A&M center who is questionable? Do we know his status for the game?
I haven't seen anything yet, and I nothing that I can say out loud. Just a lot of Aggies saying yeah, we don't think he's playing. So nothing that I can say out loud with confidence and have any substance behind it. It's just a feeling that he's not going to be back. And even so, I don't think Missouri's defensive line is necessarily a lot better than even Arkansas's that they played last week. But that Arkansas D-line gave A&M some fits, and
it did. They didn't pull away until the very, very end of that game.
Yeah, and Marcel Reed is really struggling to connect on passes down the field. And so I think Missouri comes up, they stick a ton of guys in the box, try to take away Marcel's legs before he really kind of gets cooking. I like Missouri kind of, awakening a little bit this weekend, getting themselves a big W at Kyle Field. That's where a lot of teams find themselves big Ws. So
that's right. Yeah, I think, it's really tough because Missouri has yet to have a substantial win this season. They've really struggled against some bad teams. Boston College was close. They struggled against Vandy last week, even if Vandy's playing a little bit better.
2 weeks ago, they're coming off a bye, right?
Off a bye.
Was that right? Was that not last week?
No, 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. Missouri's coming off a bye, but this is their first road game, though.
I like it a lot more now. I didn't realize they were coming off a bye, so I definitely like that a lot more for sure.
It's like you said, they've struggled, but they had a lot of penalties in that Boston College game, a ton. I got a lot better against Vanderbilt, only 3 penalties. I want to say offensively at least, and so they were kicking themselves in the foot on offense a lot. just really hurting themselves. But with a bye week, I'm hoping Coach Drink gets it figured out. I think that Cook will do a good job as far as protecting the football, giving that offense a chance, because Missouri will score. That wide receiving core is too good. A&M's pretty aggressive on defense. They'll get themselves in space against an Aggie defense that's giving up some big plays. We talked about it last week. And the third play of the game last week, they gave up a 75-yarder to Taylon Green through the air, and then a couple of other big plays in that first quarter. So with the bye week and them having extra time to prepare, Kyle Field is a difficult place to play. The 11 a.m. kickoff helps, right? It's got to help. So, I like Mizzou in that spot.
Love it.
Do you think this is the game where Brady Cook really starts to flash what we saw from him last year? Because I feel like we've talked about this on here before, but we don't know if Missouri has just kept it vanilla because their schedule has been so easy to start the year off. But we really thought that Brady Cook and their offense in general just hasn't got it going the way that they did last year, like Brady Cook and Luther Burden. Do you feel like this is going to be like a breakout game for both of them?
It's got to be. You've had your bye week.
Yeah.
It's time to cook. You treated the first 2 weeks like a preseason camp where you had him out there like 1 out of every 4 plays. Like, that's why he's back in school. Let that man go ball. And like you said, it's been 4 terrible opponents. Not terrible. On paper coming into the season, 4 terrible opponents coming in. Boston College has been scrappy. Obviously, Vanderbilt's not as bad as a lot of people think they are. They're a lot better in the trenches than I thought they'd be. But, it's time, right? Like, Mizzou's got to come around soon and show something. So we're about to get into the meat of that schedule, and you can't have these little preseason efforts anymore. So I like it. It's really hard for me to think that they don't find a way with the bye week to put up 24, 27, 30 points, and it probably difficult for A&M to reach that number. But all right, so we've got one more from Brandie, right? No, have we done your fourth one yet, Parker? We just did your fourth one, right?
I've done 3, but actually
3, okay.
3, so.
Okay, no worries, man. So your 3 for sure: Michigan, Duke, Ole Miss first half 6.5. I like it, man. Brandie, what's your last play, man?
My last play, and I hate betting on these games just in general because I feel like you never know how they might go. But I've watched one of these teams in almost every game this season, and this is me fading them, and I'm taking Navy minus 9.5 against Air Force on the road. And I know what some are probably thinking, that's a pretty long line on the road for an Armed Forces game. That's a rivalry game. I don't really care. Air Force is really bad, and their defense is really bad. They let Wyoming put 30-plus points on them this weekend, and I've talked so much shit about Wyoming this year. Air Force is I think they're 1-3 or 1-4 going into this game, and Navy's undefeated going into this game, have some solid wins. They killed UAB last weekend. They played a pretty close, but ended up pulling away game against Memphis as well. And so I just think this Navy team is a lot better than this Air Force team is. And Navy's also changed their scheme a little bit, and they've been able to air the ball out more. And I don't know anybody on Air Force's secondary that's going to be able to stop the passing game that Navy's going to come into this game with. There will be a time, I think, where I do fade Navy because I think teams are going to start figuring out what they're doing. They're not used to Navy doing what they're doing this season, but they're doing it. So, Navy minus 9.5 in a fun Armed Forces matchup. Don't always love picking the favorite, especially not on the road and what feels like a longer line in a rivalry game, but I like it, and it's me betting on Navy's offense and me fading this horrible, horrible, horrible Air Force defense.
I like it. I definitely understand, the hesitation and concern. It does feel like a big line in this type of game where we know we're going to see a ton of ground game and short or long possessions. And so we talked about it. It's hard to see a way that Navy doesn't win this by like 2 touchdowns or more. They're a lot better than Air Force, obviously, and they do a lot of the same things that Air Force does. Defense is better, offense is better, and then you run in a lot of the same schemes. So naturally, you think Navy runs away with this one. Any thoughts on this big Armed Forces matchup, Mr. Parker?
Not for me, man. And unfortunately, I do have to go. I'm getting a call from work, and I have to take it. So,
well, thank you, Mr. Perfect Guest Picker. 4-0 in his career. Michigan plus 2.5, Duke plus 9.5, Ole Miss minus 6.5 first half. Lock those in from Parker. Thanks for being here, brother.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. Good luck on y'all's shows.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too.
Whoops. But so, no, I like it. I mean, it's really, really hard to envision a world that Air Force keeps that game close. I can't, we've faded Wyoming all year long. And now you have a team in Air Force which in the pick'em, I did take Wyoming. I was proud of myself for that.
Look, I took UAB against Navy this past weekend and watched that game in the Pick'em League. Watched that game and I was like, what was I thinking? And then I was like, oh my gosh, this Navy offense is incredible. And I've actually watched a couple of Air Force game, or I've watched almost every Air Force game and haven't watched a ton of Navy as much. But I was like, wow. So then I went back and watched highlights from like their first couple of games. I'm like, this is actually pretty decent. Did a little bit of like digging, and this is like the first time Navy started out 4-0 since like 1945 or something. So something crazy like that. I think they're like real contenders in the AAC right now. So yeah. I mean, who knows? Wouldn't that be crazy if we get an Armed Forces team in the playoffs for that G5 spot? But
it would be pretty cool.
Right.
I there's no way in the world that I would ever take Air Force in this spot plus the 9.5. I think the only play there is Navy. I like it. That's one that I'll certainly be telling with you. I'm honestly, I'm a fan of all 5 of the plays on your card. The Michigan game feels like dirty and weird just because it makes no sense as to why the line's that way. So I'm just going to take it, close my eyes and roll with it because I don't really love the way that those two teams are playing football. So I don't know if I'll watch, but I will be taking that with you. My 5th play, and this is a huge line, Penn State minus 28 at home against UCLA. UCLA has been the underdog in 2 very big spreads over the last couple of weeks. Oregon, I think, was 24. LSU was like 24 as well. 2 huge spreads. They covered both of those. A lot of traveling. You're talking about going down to Baton Rouge. You had, I want to say, a little bit of a rain delay in that one. The heat, the humidity, it was really nasty. Well, then they turn around and they go play Oregon last week, and they were about to get smoked. Absolutely smoked by Oregon, and Dylan Gabriel threw a really bad pick 6 right before the half ended. 14-point swing there, and then the second half, which is kind of mundane, just hanging out. Hey, Reagan, thanks for being here.
Reagan,
he's so cute in person. Oh my god! But yeah. So it was like I had Oregon in the pick 'em, and I was like, what is going on here? They had so much ease in the first half, and then they didn't really do anything in that second half, and so I was kind of disappointed with them. But I just think it's a really bad, really, really bad UCLA offense. You're traveling to Penn State. You're going to face a really good defense. James Franklin was kind of pissed about the way that game played out. Like, I think he expected it to be a little bit easier. He saw a little more avenues to points that they didn't really follow up on or get there with. And so I think Penn State, Drew Allar, they come out playing pretty pissed off offensively. They have a really big first half here. Ethan Barbers has been awful for UCLA. Or Garbers, not Barbers. Apologize. Awful. Three touchdowns, 8 picks, something along those lines. This is the best defense he's going to have seen so far. And so I think Penn State early and often in this one, I have it 42-7 Nittany Lions, just blowing them out. A lot going on for UCLA these last couple of weeks, playing some good opponents, traveling a ton. And then now I think that might be playing a team that has, like I said, has the best defense, and then an offense that's really trying to make a statement, go out and show that they're a little bit different than they've been in the past, and just a really good spot. And also when the number's that big, it just kind of raises a red flag. It feels like they're kind of begging you to take UCLA in this spot, but I'm not going to do it. Brandie, any thoughts there?
I think I'm going to tell you on this one from like both a betting perspective and in the Pick'em League. I like it. And I'm usually super opposed to these like really long lines for teams that have struggled early on, but have kind of got their ground under them. I had UCLA against Oregon last week, did not have them against LSU, and I did not have them against Indiana. So I think I'm like 2-1 in picking games that I've had to pick for UCLA games. So I've watched a little bit of them because they have been in our Pick'em League. It's not a good football team, not a good coach football team.
Nope.
Like, it's just not a good, and they do come out hot. And every game I've watched, they've come out pretty hot. But I have watched a lot of Penn State, and this is a team that I think wants to make a true run at getting in the playoffs. And they have started to find their footing on offense more in the last couple of weeks than when they started the season off. And so for that reason, I'm tailing this one. It's a long line, kind of scary, but I like it. I can get behind it for sure.
It's going to be a whipping one way or the other. I just hope it's by 29 or more. I definitely think Penn State walks all over them. So you have 13 plays from us right here. I'll say this. Ever since we've gone hoodie after a 1-4 week 1, we've had winning weeks on this side over here. So I'm burning up at the moment because it's still hot as hell in Texas. But the hoodie has powers, okay? So real quick, Brandie's 5. You got Louisville minus 6.5 at home against Southern Methodist University. You have Iowa first half plus 10.5 as they go on the road to Columbus, and a big one with the Ohio State Buckeyes. Michigan plus 2.5 on the West Coast up at Husky Stadium. Makes no sense. The only play there is Michigan. Hard to think that ground game doesn't get it done for them. Clemson, a very hot Clemson minus 13.5. Brandie bet that early, correct? But she was still saying
I think it might be minus 14.5 now when I looked before the show, but I'd take it up to 16.5.
I love it. Up to 16.5, she said. Not a lot of positives about Florida State in general right now. And so it's hard to think, they've been getting last week. I don't think that they quit, but man, nothing went right for them in that second half. SMU just ran right through them. So hard to think Clemson can't do the same with a better roster. Last play for Miss Brandie, Navy minus 9.5. Fading a bad Air Force team. Bad on defense. They've been bad on offense. If you stayed up late last weekend and watched your game in Laramie, then you know that. But horrible. 5 good plays, Brandie. Brandie is very hot. You're talking about 4-1 over the last 2 weeks each. So 8-2 total there for the season on this channel. What is it? I had it written down. Should be 12-7. 12-7. And that is with a couple of very tough luck losers in there to start her year. Like we said, she had 2 or 3 plays that were just, it was insane that they didn't get there for her. So Brandie's really, really rolling on the channel right now, guys. 12-7. For myself, you've got Arizona State minus 3. You've got the Missouri money line on the road against Texas A&M. Penn State minus 28 at home against a very bad UCLA team. Iowa full game plus the 19.5 at Ohio State. Brandie's going to win her first half bet. I just need the Hawkeyes to keep it rolling for another 30 minutes. And then the Vanderbilt Commodores plus 23 against Alabama. Tough for Alabama to win a game like that. Come back, really play clean football. I'm not saying that they'll struggle with Vanderbilt. I just think it's a game that's a little bit closer. Shout out to Diego P for doing his thing all the time, making Vanderbilt football fun to watch again. So, Brandie, you've got your 5 plays. I've got my 5. I'm missing Parker's. Parker plus 2.5, I guess. So I guess technically we have 12 plays. Duke plus 9.5 as they go up against Georgia Tech, and then Ole Miss minus 6.5 first half on the road at South Carolina. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm pretty worried about Ole Miss traveling to Columbia after kind of having their season's hope shattered a little bit. I'm not saying they're shattered. I should say cracked. They're going to walk into a buzzsaw. I'm not saying that South Carolina wins that game, but I think expect it to be a very elite SEC football atmosphere. And not saying that game won't win.
South Carolina's coming off a bye too.
Exactly, yeah. And so I think Parker can get there with the 6.5. But I do expect a really good football game in that one all the way through, to be honest with you. I think the South Carolina is going to be smelling blood a little bit after losing in a very tough way to LSU. So, I hope everybody's likes what we've come up with. We've worked hard on these. We're rolling. We're hot. Brandie is crushing the pick'em lead. She has like a 7 or 8 game lead over second place right now. Like that's a pretty substantial lead. So shout out to her for that.
Like after this week, if I'm still there, I'll be a little happy, but we have a long way to go. We're not full through halfway through the season yet. So
I'm being nice, but you fell off so hard last week. Like you won, you only had 14 wins compared to every other week you had.
Look, I had to sweep the last 3 games to get there though. So
you always do this. I feel like you always every week you go through the picks and it shows just like columns, and all of Brandie's picks at the end green, all of mine red. The evening games are kicking my tail, and so long ways to go for me. Brandie's got a lead, and she'll fight to hold on to that. But it's been a lot of fun so far. It's fun talking all the picking with everybody, and then there's a little bit of a prize pool at the end. So everyone has their eyes on that. Definitely, I'm coming for second. I'm not going for first. I'm coming for second. I just have to make that said because you're pretty good ways ahead of me. So, Brandie, thank you for doing it.
You said you were thinking about 6 picks. Do you have a lean for this week?
I do, and I left them off because I continue to mention them on almost every channel that I do, apparently. But
I know what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's back. We're back on Tech and plus 6. I'd even be tempted to sprinkle the money line. Now, I thought Tech's defense was absolutely awful last week with Cincinnati, but hey, they did have a pick 6 that kind of turned that game around. They gave up a couple late touchdowns in that one. They're getting Jalen Lux back. Is it Jalen Lux? They're getting Lux back this week in the secondary corner. I think or at safety. I think that'll be a big help for them. But offensively, those guys are clicking. Baron Morton had an eternity to throw the ball for Tech against Cincinnati. Didn't matter if they blitzed. Didn't matter if they rushed 3 or 4. Nothing mattered. They couldn't get to him. And then Taj Brooks is killing it running back. One of the best running backs in the league. He's not Ashton Genty, but he's damn good. And a good Tech O-line that finally seems to be healthy now. Underrated wide receiving core. My big thing is I just think that this number is too high, and that people, when it came out at 4.5 and bounced to 6, I don't understand that. I think that people are really overreacting to that win for Arizona against Utah and a backup quarterback. Plus, Utah plays a very physical brand of football, and big win for Arizona. I'm not saying they come in all beat and banged up.
Cam Rising wasn't healthy, right, for that game?
No, right.
Yeah, and also we remember how Arizona did against Kansas State. Like, I'm a big Fafita believer, but like, I'm with you here. I like the Texas Tech pick. I think the books are overreacting too.
I'm there, and honestly, I like this one a little more than I like my Iowa play. Honestly, guys, I would go more with Brandie's first half play just because it makes a little bit more sense because of the way that first half probably plays out. They probably schemed up some early points, hoping they've had a lot of time to prep this Ohio State defense and to try to scheme up some easy points there in the beginning. Not that it'll be easy, but I like the Tech play. I really do. Noah is a very talented quarterback. He's a lot of fun to watch, but everything he's doing this year is to Mr. McMillan, who has like half of the receiving yards. Tech has a pretty good, I'm not going to say pretty good defense. I almost said that out loud on this channel, Brandie. Everybody YouTube might have like banned us. YouTube might have banned us.
That would get clipped with just like you saying Texas Tech has a good defense and like posted everywhere.
I literally meant to just say Tech has a pretty good chance, I think, at a good defensive game plan in this, and defending McMillan and limiting him some. And if you can do that, you take away a big part of this Wildcat offense. But yeah, it's mostly just for me. I think it'll be a nice little shootout because that's the game that Tech are playing this year, some shootouts. But I think they'll do a good enough job, and I think that Tech offense is gonna have their way with the Arizona offense a little bit. Now, could be wrong, but hey, Tech's proved me right the last couple of times. It was pretty dang sweaty there at the end of the night. I guess late last Saturday night, I didn't know what was going on because Tech had a 14-point lead with like 6 minutes left, and next thing you know, Cincinnati's driving to tie the game. But yeah, so with the lean there, I do like Tech a little bit. No idea why my TV just randomly turned on by itself. Smart TVs. But
I have a lean too. Okay, out in the desert for me as well. They made a statement last week, and I actually almost had them on my card until all of the shit blew up with their quarterback. But I actually almost had UNLV minus 3.5 last week. Then the line totally flipped on its head when all this stuff came out about their quarterback, knowing that their backup was just as good. I still picked them in the Pick'em League, but I actually think that Syracuse has a good chance to upset UNLV this weekend. They're plus 6.5, not taking their money line, but I like their spread at plus 6.5. Kyle McCord has had a really, really good season, and nobody is talking about the Syracuse team that's actually done pretty well this year. And I know UNLV has G5 playoff hopes that are going to come crushing down when Syracuse comes into town this weekend.
I looked at that one too. I really did. I looked hard at that one. I thought honestly that might be a play that you had on the card. I like that as a lean a lot. It makes a lot of sense. I think that once again, people kind of overreacting to the Stanford loss for Syracuse, and then maybe the big win last week for UNLV over Fresno State. So that's a line I would definitely feel comfortable sprinkling a little bit on the money line, but definitely like that spread a little bit. So yeah, I mean, I like Tech and Syracuse just as much as like any of the other plays we have. So we've been hot with the leans. Last week, Parker had Tech, but my lean was Tech, and then I believe you always win your leans. So
no, the 1 week I had Kansas money line lean against West Virginia. Then they were on their way to cashing that, but the rain delay kind of messed that up, and West Virginia ended up winning that game.
Winning that one. So 2 weeks in a row, Kansas has gotten you only once.
I know, that's why I'm like that's why I'm totally on board with the Arizona State bet. I'm like, let's go. I like it.
I will fade them for you, Queen. We got this. But
yes.
Anything else you'd like to bring up or mention before we let you out of here?
Reagan just asked if you've bought your flights to Nashville because he has.
I know. I feel like I'm slacking now. Reagan just called me out. Got to get that done. I'm just like, that's embarrassing. When Brandie mentioned that Reagan and Eddie were headed to Nashville to watch the Horns, like, you have no idea how warm that made my heart. Hanging out with those two. And Brandie, that elite
I'm like, right okay, there. What am I, chopped liver? No,
she's like, you weren't excited before, but no, it'll be a lot of fun. Definitely a fun day of college football and tailgating the whole thing. So can't wait to hang with those guys, and definitely got to get on that. So thank you, Reagan, for the friendly reminder, for being here and showing some love. Everybody that hung out with us, hope you guys are still with us and got all those picks in. Yeah, Brandie, anything else other than the plane tickets?
That's it, I think. Let's have another winning week.
Let's have another winning week. I did bad about posting our plays last weekend. I will do better this weekend. But yeah, we're gonna keep pumping out winners, and we'll get the people in here. And this was the most action we've had in the chat. So people are noticing. You keep winning, keep doing this 4-1 weeks. Everybody will be back. So guys, thank you for watching. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel. Brandie is doing an incredible job as co-host. Parker came on last week, obviously killed it as a guest picker, putting out winning picks, working hard to make sure that we know what we're talking about when we start talking against the spread. And so thank you guys all for being here, for watching, for showing